Um, this one caught me off guard. This is a picture of um, this is Captain Nathan Michael Smith. He's an intelligence officer stationed in Kuwait, who is suing President Obama over the legality of war versus ISIS. This gentleman has voiced his support for the effort against ISIS. He simply feels that it is his constitutional duty to remind the president or to point out that the president is utilizing, in his opinion, authorization that is not applicable to the current battle against ISIS. And he sounds like he's a one of the people who believes, how should I say this? Well, a constitutional conservative is what this reminds me of, and that's fine if that's what he believes. And so he believes that President Obama does not have the proper authorization to wage war. He wants to wage this war. He's actively serving. Right. This is not someone which blows me away, because I personally, and I don't know about you, maybe you knew, but I did not know that an officer or a soldier could sue the commander in chief, right? Could essentially sue the federal government. But there is I think the principle on which that they are carrying out this lawsuit is the principle that soldiers do not have to carry out duties or orders that are unconstitutional. And so Captain Nathan Michael Smith feels that this war is unconstitutional, and so he's bringing a lawsuit against President Obama. The core of the lawsuit is, again, that Obama does not have the proper authorization. He's still utilizing authorization that came right after September 11th, 2001. He's using the authorization. There's also a second authorization that President Obama could be using, which came in the use of the funding of the Iraq war. But President Obama is actually utilizing the authorization that George W. Bush got immediately after 9/11 to go after Al Qaeda. Here's the crux of the lawsuit in very simple terms. Essentially, they are saying that we are no longer fighting Al Qaeda. We're now fighting ISIS. And because we're no longer fighting Al Qaeda, this use of fourth authorization is no longer constitutional. It's no longer applicable to the current battle. And the response from the White House is that this is in fact constitutional. This use of force authorization that they received to fight Al Qaeda is still applicable, because Al Qaeda in Iraq specifically is what splintered off into becoming ISIS in the first place. So this is a fascinating story. This is a fascinating news article, because in actuality, if you understand the origins of ISIS, President Obama, what he's saying is accurate. This is Al Qaeda in Iraq in another form. And a lot of people, there's been a lot of debate about the origins of ISIS, but the origins of ISIS, they came out of Al Qaeda in Iraq. And so the question really is whether or not you agree with the war, right? Whether or not you agree what's going on, it doesn't really matter where you fall on this, in terms of the implications. Would we have to stop fighting someone just because they rebranded? Because in a sense, according to what the New York Times and the Boston Globe reported, because that's my daily read, in a sense, that's the basis of this lawsuit. He's suing because this authorization was granted for Al Qaeda, but not ISIS. But Al Qaeda simply broke up and rebranded as ISIS. Al Qaeda in Iraq, more specifically, broke up and rebranded as ISIS. So are we simply supposed to say, oh, you guys have changed your name, you've changed your branding, we can't fight you anymore? There's a little bit more to it than that, but that's the core of it. He has, I have to give it to him, though. The this is one of those other things that I want to just talk about from a pure political science perspective, because it is a great irony that a constitutional conservative is arguing something that could end up with a left-leaning result, which is withdrawal of all combat operations against ISIS, right? Most are some, not all, but some progressives, some on the left would rather see us not engage in any conflict. I'm not going to tell you where I fall. I was just getting ready to tell you where I fall. I'm not. It's not even worth it right now. But what's ironic and what has to be calculated and measured and studied is someone from the right arguing against someone who is supposed to be on the left, and the core essence of the results of this argument would be further left than the person who's supposed to be on the left. This soldier is arguing against Obama, essentially saying that we shouldn't be in this war because we're not authorized to be in this war. And I know you can always use whatever argument you want, right? So there's been a plenty of conservatives who would argue against President Obama strictly because, simply because they want to oppose Obama no matter what. They would be willing to oppose President Obama. And this is the crux of it, right? It's the willingness to oppose President Obama or any progressive on every single thing they possibly can, even if that means them betraying something that's core to who they have become over the last 40 years, which is this brash neoconservative, militaristic, adventurism party, right? And so now that President Obama has owned this war because of their need for political opposition, they are now fighting against Obama, and the result would undermine their own war, just like Obamacare, just like the Affordable Care Act. It's hilarious, right? You know, they fought against President Obama on Obamacare when Obamacare was originally Romney Care, Nixon Care. It was a Republican idea. And so you have this realignment that's happening in so many different ways. We see it with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I do believe that Donald Trump is going to pivot left on some issues, further left than Hillary Clinton on some issues. So we see it on a national level, and then we also see it on this level with this officer who's suing President Obama. And again, this is just mixing in some of my my desire to just look at it from a pure realignment perspective. I really, it's fascinating. I think it's crazy that, or not necessarily crazy, but it's crazy that I never knew that officers could actually, or soldiers could actually sue the federal government. And in my research, they could sue them for a lot of things, but one of the things they cannot sue them for is personal injury. I guess that makes sense when you think about it.